Hello fellow humans and welcome to the Madhouse. I'm Josh. Today is for me the third day of Vlogmas and I'm going to talk about my November favourites. So, November was a good month for me. It had its ups and downs. Say I spent nearly a week and a half being quite ill, but that did allow me to get some other things done, and as a rule, it was not entirely unenjoyable, not the being ill part, but the things I got to do during that time. I got to go home and see my family, which was fantastic. It had been a very long time. Yes, I call them every week, but it's not the same as seeing them. And my brother, I only speak to when they were there because, to be fair, he's a bit of an arsehole and so am I. We don't really have that much to talk about, which is a bit saddening, but it's also, if we had something to talk about, we would say it. Mostly just interact with Facebook nowadays. I got to see him in a pantomime, which was fun. It wasn't the best pantomime I've ever been to by any means, but it was enjoyable, as all pantomimes are. And speaking of being at home, while I was visiting my parents, I started watching The Crown, that new Netflix series, and I love it. I have now seen it 3 times, and it was utterly magnificent. Claire Foy's performance as the Queen is going to be a hot contender for awards, also going to be matched by something from the other television programme I watched and finished this month, which is Victoria. Jenna Coleman was fantastic as well, and the two of them, well, both of them I think have an equal shot at winning Best Actress at the BAFTAs, and possibly something more in a few other places. Though to be honest, even though I'm on the minority among my family, my bets are on Claire Foy. Something else I did quite enjoy was Matt Smith as Prince Philip, because it's rather weird thinking about lusting after Prince Philip, but Matt Smith, he is a very good looking man and seems to have a very nice bottom. Oh dear. And keeping in terms of visual media, I went to see a film this month and I absolutely adored it. And if you can guess what it is, 10 house points to whatever house you're in. And I've kind of given it away now, but it is Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Many people had mixed feelings about this, thinking that while it was objectively a good film, they wanted to just let Harry Potter die and let them remember it their own way. But I personally was very excited. Ever since The Deathly Hallows finished, and well, after I watched the film and I'd read the book, I'd read the book years before the film came out, but you get what I'm trying to say. I have been very excited and interested in Grindelwald and Dumbledore, especially since it was announced that Dumbledore was gay, because it explains his motivations significantly more, because we know that Dumbledore is a big fan of muggles, and is very protective of them, and is generally a very kind, good person. But then to learn that he dabbled in the dark arts, and was a cohort and intimate friend of one of the darkest wizards of all time. We don't get to see Dumbledore at all in the film, though we do see, spoiler alert, Grindelwald, though not in the way one might imagine. And I'm so excited to see what's coming, because Dumbledore's presence is heavily implied, even though he doesn't make the appearance. The plot of the film itself was intriguing and compelling, and the exploration we got to see of the American wizarding world was fun. The roles of house elves, for example, were very interesting and quite different from what we'd seen in British history. There were several fantastic displays of magic, and the beasts themselves were great. It was a very funny, light-hearted film in many regards, but it still had the edge of darkness all the way through it, leading up to what is widely regarded as the greatest duel of all time in the 5th film yet to come, which will end in 1945. That greatest duel between Dumbledore and Grindelwald, while Grindelwald was master of the Elder Wand, the most powerful wand in existence, so there must have been something truly spectacular about it. The duel is known to have lasted 3 hours between the two most capable and powerful wizards of their time, so there must be something truly fantastic happening. Sorry, I've gone off again. I can't talk about this film concisely. I've tried to film a review and ended up being half an hour long, and I just couldn't cut it down to anything truly digestible. So I'm just going to cut it off here and say I liked it. Newt Scamander was good as a hero. He focused on kindness rather than impulses as Harry did, though to be fair that's maybe because Harry is a hormonal teenager who has the soul of a dark wizard inside him. He was not going to be the most stable individual. It was a good film. I would rate it at a solid 4.5 out of 5. And now for the books that I read during November. There was Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, which is an old story, one of the Arthurian stories that has long been one of my favourites, but I had to read it for my studies, and it was very enjoyable. Not just because I'd not read it since I was a child, so I was learning new things from it in that way, what I'd missed, but also then analysing the shit out of it because I was doing it for my studies, and finding that I enjoyed it even more. On a similar note, I have also read several of the Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. They are so much cleverer and funnier than they were when I first tried to read them for pleasure when I was 13 years old. I simply did not like them. I was not interested in them in the slightest. They bored me to tears, but this time round, they were funny, they were clever, I laughed myself silly at some parts. They're incredibly progressive for the time too, and very much enjoyable on that part. I also finished listening to the audiobook of Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets by J.K. Rowling, narrated by Stephen Fry, because I love Stephen Fry's voice, and it's become a yearly tradition for me to reread as many of the Harry Potter books as I can on the run up to Christmas. And audiobooks allow me to do that while still reading my other things for my studies and generally being a productive person. The final book that I read and finished this month, but not that I started, is Defining Marriage by Matt Baum. Although really, from how it's spelled, I'd say Boimer because it's got the E on the end, so it presumably had an umlaut at some point, but never mind. This is a book all about the progression towards marriage equality in the United States, but it's not just specifically American. It is a somewhat universal story in terms of gay equality. It's an issue that has faced pretty much every nation in the West, and many are still facing. It is completely legal in the UK now, except in Northern Ireland, where they're a little bit behind the times in that regard. But then again, they also can't get abortions there either. Yay, Catholicism! No, actually, I think Northern Ireland is more Protestant, but still. It's an issue, and it shouldn't be. Don't politicise people's bodies. Never mind, I'm going off on a different topic. It contains stories and interviews dating from 40-50 years ago, from the beginning of the LGBT plus movement, or at least mainstream movement, until the present day, or shortly after the decision in 2015 to legalise same-sex marriage in the entirety of the United States. And I find it fascinating to look through and read these stories and feel how much passion went into it, because for me, I'd never even considered marriage to be a possibility for a very long time. I'd never imagined having a wedding, because after I came to the term with the fact that I was gay, it was just, it wasn't a thing, it wasn't a possibility. Why bother imagining it? And then all of a sudden it was, and I'm very thankful for that. And these people, the ones who campaigned tirelessly for years, who did imagine that it would be a possibility, are the reason if I were to find a man and fall in love with him tomorrow, I could get married to him. We have to be very grateful for the older generations and the current ones who have pioneered this field to try and bring that equality to more people. And I myself hope to add my own voice to that choir for other nations around the world, because it's not enough that people in the UK and the US have that equality. It's a very moving book, and I urge you to read it if you are at all interested in the lives of these people who have helped to change the history of the world in many regards, or in LGBT plus issues in the slightest. It's something that we should all be thankful for. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed that video, because I know I did. It's rather pleasant to just talk about the things that you really liked over the month. Although I have considered maybe I should also do just a monthly dislikes video, but I also don't want to feed into that negativity again. Because yes, there were lots of things I do dislike about November. Being violently ill. Donald Trump. Everything that could be said about him has been said, and I will add nothing new to that discussion, so I'll leave everyone else to it. If you did enjoy the video though, please let me know, and tell me what were the things that you enjoyed most in November. Until tomorrow then, with day probably number 4 of my Vlogmas, tatty byes.